The TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by HDA ModelWorks, suppliers of scale lighting products, detail accessory parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today.
Hello again, everybody. Boyd here with you. Welcome to part 6 of our Polar Lights 350 scale Enterprise build. I'm moving right along here. We left off last time with the most of the work on the secondary hull. We got everything prepared with the lighting on the inside, all the wiring done. Got our pylons put on. So we're going to work on the Shuttle Bay, getting that installed here on this video, and getting the neck put together and installed onto the secondary hull, and then we'll be able to close it all up and start doing our putty work and then priming and painting it. So I just wanted to show you before I closed up the neck here what I've been working on. I've got all the kit glass put in, done the same thing that I did on the other ones. I dusted over it with some white paint after I got them all laid in there, just to diffuse them a little bit. And like I talked about on the last video, the Enterprise, as we saw it on the original television show, it had certain window groups that were always blacked out. We saw what we had on the secondary hull there, and we have a couple here on the neck as well. So basically it's these two windows over here, these two, and this one kind of off all by its lonesome over here. So I've gone ahead and done the same procedure. I've blacked these out with some of my black craft acrylic paint. Just took a brush and brushed over it. Took about 2 or 3 coats to make it totally black. And then up here in this one corner right here, we have this little kind of red window on the port and starboard side of the neck that you see also on the detail of the original ship, and you can see it on the 11-foot restored model as well. So that's just a little bit of Tamiya transparent red. And I just brushed that on the same way. I did it on the outside and the inside and laid it in there. And then with our nice warm white LED tape here, you can see where I placed it. I've got one here in these kind of open slots. Got the same thing kind of mirrored on the other side here, and with just these 4 little strips, this whole thing is going to light up really bright. You don't want to put too much light in here. You know, it's just going to look way brighter than the rest of the ship. I figured out over time that doing this amount here gives a really nice balance to what we did with the lighting on the secondary hull. So that'll all light up these windows here really nice. And we'll also get a little bit of light coming through these little red guys right here. So you can see I've routed the wires down straight out the bottom, which I talked about in the last video as well. When our neck goes down onto this, those wires will come down out through the front of the deflector housing opening there again, and meet in with our other power wires. We'll be tying everything together at that one particular spot, and so that'll work out really good. Now, when we get this glued together and then get it mounted on the secondary hull, we'll be lowering the saucer onto this. You know, when we get the secondary hull all done and ready to go, I plan on what I like to do is I get that all finished, get it all painted, get most of the markings on it, get the, the little blue forward stripe here on the front part of the neck, get that all painted and everything's ready to go, so that once we have that secondary hull in that kind of shape, we can just lower the saucer right down onto this, and we'll have the saucer mated with the secondary hull, and that's all that's left at that point is putting on the engine nacelles. So we'll get this glued together. I'll just kind of go through that with you really quick. I've scraped off all the paint all the way around on this whole thing. It's really important on these structural pieces to make sure you got your parts absolutely clean. Somebody asked me in one of the comments on the last video about this window glass and why I'm able to glue that in, over top of this paint. I've tried this, for probably 30 or 40 of these models now, and it works just fine. The regular glue is strong enough to penetrate that paint right there and hold the window glass in. I've never had it pop out on me or whatever when I'm putting my masks on and stuff like that. And it's just fine for that. And it kind of actually eats into the plastic. I let it leak underneath of the plastic a little bit here, and it gets out. You know, this isn't going to come out for nothing. So, but you could use, you know, if you don't want to do it that way yourself, you can use some hot glue or some other kind of glue. I wouldn't use the Solar Res to hold this in because it's just not made to, you know, the Solar Res is not made to bond things together, so it's not a glue. So I wouldn't use that for that. But canopy glue, canopy glue isn't, you know, it's not really strong. It's not gonna, you know, I don't think it'd be strong enough to hold this stuff in. But you know, that's why I just go ahead and use regular model glue, and we'll be just fine. But to glue these halves together and everything, we want to make sure that we've got good, clean plastic all the way around. And because this is going to have, you know, the whole weight of the saucer on it, it can move back and forth and flex. And we don't want any of these to, you know, once we do all this nice putty work and everything here, we don't want that to crack or anything. One of the places it likes to split, if you don't get it glued good, is right here and right up here at the top. So make sure you get plenty of glue there and it's all nice and clean and you shouldn't have any problems. So I'm just using my regular Model Master glue here, nothing fancy. This stuff works great. You don't have to, you know, you guys have heard me say this a whole bunch. You don't have to go out and buy that expensive, you know, European brand or German brand or, you know, any of the other so-called fancy glues that are out there. This stuff works just fine. It's been formulated for years to work with styrene plastic. It actually welds the plastic together. But like I said, the whole key to it, to make it work well, is you've got to have a clean surface. So I'm just putting a nice bead of this all the way around here, making sure I get every little spot. I want to concentrate in those areas I talked about. Going to put a little bit on our connecting pegs here. This little spot right here actually touches the other side, so we'll glue that. And then we'll repeat the same thing on the mirrored side here. Plenty of glue in these little attaching pin spots. And a lot around that little triangle shape right there. That always likes to split a little bit. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put the two halves together here. I'm going to try my best not to get any glue on my outer surfaces here. Get all my wires out of the way, and down she goes. There we go. Squeeze her together real good. Got our wires coming out real nice. Let's go ahead and get our glue out of the way. Then I'm going to do my usual thing here and take some of my masking tape, and we're just going to hold it together nice and tight. Pull this tape really super snug when you're wrapping it around that, and it'll hold it together really good for you. You don't need to use clamps and all that fancy stuff either. This works just fine for this part. I'm purposely leaving a little bit of glue. You can see it kind of oozing out there a little bit. That's a good sign. That means that we got plenty of glue in there, and once that gets hard, we'll just you know, sand that all down real nice, and that'll help fill in the seam a little bit actually. Okay, I've got that. Now, right in these spots right here where this top comes together, and right here, and right here, and right here, these four spots, you want to put a little bit of tape on here too. Pull them together really good, because you want those to be together super tight, because that's got to slide up inside the saucer on the top. And, whoop, yeah, I'm putting so much pressure on it I tore it. Let me try that again. That's got to fit in that slot on the saucer, and it, believe me, even if you have any, even one coat of paint on this little area right here that's got to slide in there, it won't fit. I mean, you'll struggle like crazy trying to push it up in there. In fact, I'm going to do the same thing on these little areas right here after this is dry. I'm getting this one locked down. I'm going to do the same thing on this thing here, on these edges a little bit that I did on the upper and lower slots on our pylons that you remember I did. I'm going to chamfer these down, these edges, just a little bit with my sandpaper, so they're not perfectly square. They have a little bit of a rounded edge on them, and that way when you first go to start it and put it in, you know, the slot in the saucer, it'll be easier to get it going, and then you can push it down in there. Same thing on this when it goes down into the, you know, we're not going to actually push this down into the secondary hull like I talked about. We're going to glue it onto one side first, and then make sure it's all straight and everything. It kind of can't go in there crooked, because you'll see when you put it in there, it fits on these little slots right here, and it bottoms out on the hull, so it can't be crooked when you put it in. And then we'll put the second, you know, the other side of the hull over top of it. And what that does, like I talked about, it keeps the pressure off of the hull right here in these areas where it meets, and that way it won't split on you a little bit later, because this socket and this socket in here fit really, really tight. And if you don't do it that way, it'll spread the hull a little bit on you. So what we'll do now is we'll let this dry really good. I'll set this off to the side. That's going to take a good hour or 2 hours to dry. Then we'll sand that down, and we'll do our quick putty job on that, and that'll be ready to glue on to the secondary hull. Now, I like to go ahead and do all the putty work on this and everything before I do that, before I put it down. That way I can get in here and sand this really nice and get it all cleaned up, and we'll go from there. So I'll come back while that's drying, and we're going to actually now work on the Shuttle Bay. I talked about how we've got to, we're going to cut that open. We're going to cut the roof off of it and cut the side walls off with my Dremel tool, and open it up so we can put a couple strips of LED tape in there, and that's going to give us the lighting for the rear side windows on the secondary hull, and the you know, the dome light on the top, and there's 3 little lights on the spine there at the rear. So we'll come right back with that. Stand by, everybody. Okay, you guys, I'm back with you again, and here is our Shuttle Bay. Showed it to you last time where it was all glued together. I've gone ahead now, and what I've done here is I've put one of my window masks on right here, where this little rear window is, this little control room area that's above the Shuttle Bay doors, and I've taken my hobby knife and I painted all this whole thing with primer first, and then I flat blacked it with my regular cheap flat black spray paint. Probably 3 or 4 coats to make sure everything is light blocked here. And then I came back in, and on the back side of this little part right here, I scraped a little bit away there with my hobby knife, so that when I lay I'm going to put an 0805 SMD, another warm white one, right down in here, and the front of it's going to face the wall and be glued right up against that wall right there, and that's going to light up this little window right here. So when I pull this mask off at the end of all this stuff, that little spot right there will be lit, and everything else will be light blocked. So we've got to put lighting inside of this, because we're going to have put it inside the model, and these walls need to be gone so that we can get light coming out to light the side windows of the rear part of the ship there. So I've got my little cutoff wheel here on my Dremel tool, and I'm going to just kind of go right across like this and right across like this, and we'll cut that off, and then everything can be pulled away. We'll leave the kind of the arch here that meets the Shuttle Bay doors, and we'll leave the rear wall. Now, when you use one of these cutoff wheels, guys, make sure you practice, you know, safety, and put on a pair of safety glasses. I've got them on right now, because these things can, you know, they don't do that often, but they can, if you put a little bit too much pressure or something, they can explode, and pieces of this can go flying, and if they happen to get you in the eye, that's carbon fiber, so that's not a good thing. So it doesn't happen, not to try to scare you guys, but I've got this on about number 4 speed, and I'm going to start off right here on the side and start cutting. You just got to kind of take your time. Just let it do its thing. I'm going to go all the way down to the floor. I don't want to cut through the floor, though. Okay? I'll make sure I'm the same on the other side here. Alright, I'm right down to the floor. Now the same thing on this other side, back by the Shuttle Bay doors. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm all the way down to the bottom. Okay, now we're going to just take a some kind of a prying tool here, just basically a flat screwdriver or something like that. And we're going to start working this out of here. I get in the side of this wall right here. I'm basically just trying to get the whole thing to collapse, just like that, and break it apart here. Seems kind of silly to have it all glued together like that, but you got to do that, guys. Have it all built like it should be to start with, because that way you know that everything here is all lined up really nice and it's straight and everything, okay? You're probably wondering, well, why don't you go ahead and build this, do all that before you ahead of time? Well, I've tried it that way before, and it's just a lot harder to get it all, this little arch right here is kind of flimsy and everything, and it's hard to get it in there and get it all lined up. This way we know it's all straight. So we'll just take our hobby knife now, and we'll just kind of scrape along the cut line here and get rid of a lot of this extra burn-up plastic, melted plastic here. This doesn't have to be pretty at all, you guys. On the inside, you're not going to see it, but, I still like to clean it up pretty decent before we do anything else with it, so we can go ahead and throw away these parts. Don't need them. Just kind of get the, mainly up in here where the arch is right here, you want to make sure that area is all nice and clean and no rough stuff sticking up, because that's got to seal up against the back part of the ship, the hull opening there, and fit relatively tight so we don't get a huge light leak coming out of there. You always wind up getting a light leak with this anyway, a small one. It'll usually leak a little bit around the edges right here and up around the top of this control room where it meets the ceiling right there. But that's an easy fix, and when we get to that part, I'll show you how to fix that. We take a little bit of our perfect plastic putty and put it in there. I've got a trick for doing that I'll show you guys that works really good. But I'm just going to make sure this is all nice and smoothed out here, no burrs in the way. We've got this little slot right here. You can see where there's a little bit of a gap for some wiring to come through, and that's perfect for our little SMD that we're going to mount in there, okay? So that looks pretty good to me, you guys. It's pretty well cleaned up. Just go ahead and blow it off now and get all the junk out of there. Okay, so that's basically what it looks like. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super pretty. We'll go ahead now. I'm going to get a couple of LED strips ready, get them soldered up. Just two short little segments that are going to go right in the floor right here. We're going to drill a hole through the rear wall here, which would be kind of, if you were looking into the bay, it would be that little garage door right there. And then our wires will go straight forward out of that and join up with all of our other power wiring that we had already installed in the secondary hull. And then we're going to mount an 0805 warm white SMD right here in this little spot, and that'll be it for all the lighting that's going to be needed for the shuttle bay. So let me get those that LED strip set up, and we'll be right back. Okay, you guys, I'm back with you again after a little bit here, and I've got the shuttle bay pretty much finished up. Let me point out to you what I did here. You can see I glued a couple of short pieces of LED strip in here. This is the same strip I'm using on the rest of the hull. This is the double density warm white. Just took 3 little bulbs on each side, and that's going to light up our side windows on our rear part of our hull once we lay this in there. And I've put a 0805 SMD up in here for our little control room above the shuttle bay doors. And what I usually do is, in the past I would fill this up with some CA glue and just hit that with my kicker. But now that I've got that solar res stuff, I just put a little bit of that in there. You can see I filled it up to where it was nice and flush, and that does two things. It makes the light bounce around in here real nice to light up that dome on the top at the rear of the ship, and it kind of protects the SMD and kind of freezes it in there, and nothing can happen to the wires or anything. I ran the wires down. You can see I brought the wire from the SMD right out through this little slot right here, then straight down. I left a little bit of slack in it that you can see. That's really important. When you put SMDs in, always leave a little bit of slack on the wire, because the solder connection where those wires are attached to that are so microscopic and small that they're really fragile. So any little bit of pressure on them and everything, they're gonna separate. So always think about that. So I left a little slack there, glued the rest of it down to the floor. I drilled a little hole in the wall here to bring my wires forward. I drilled a hole big enough where the resistor on the SMD could slide through there, and we don't see any of that anyway, so that doesn't really matter, but I just want to make sure that was big enough. Pulled all the other wires through, and then what I did is I grouped them all together, and I stripped a little bit of the wire on the on the longest ones here, and then tied the other ones in. So the rest of the pigtail there is going to come all the way out the front of the ship where we brought all of our other wiring, and we'll get this mounted in the secondary hull, and we'll glue down the wires just like we did on the rest of it. I'll go ahead and power it up for you. You can see we got some nice lighting in there, and then we've got this little control room light right here, which I went ahead and pulled the mask off. You can see we got a nice little square window right there, kind of rectangle shape. Now, what I'll talk to you about that is this was going to get painted several times. Like I said, I had to paint it all with flat black, my regular spray can flat black, my cheap stuff, to light block it all, and then I went over it with a couple coats of primer. So if I know I'm going to be piling up a lot of paint, before I go ahead and do my final paint coat, my actual hull color, I'll go ahead and pull any masks that I had on at that time. So I went and pulled this one off, and I'll just put a new one back in there, because you don't want to pile up a whole bunch of paint and stuff on top of your masks. They're good for like a couple of coats, but after that, paint can start leaking in there, or they can get like covered with so much paint that it can be really hard to get them off without pulling away some of the paint that's attached to it, you know what I mean? So this had a couple of coats on there, so like I said, I just went ahead as a precaution and just pulled that off of there. I've got plenty of masks, so it's no worry. I'll put a new mask on there, and then we'll go ahead. I'm going to leave this just like it is. We'll put it in the hull, and when I paint the entire secondary hull, that'll just get painted right over, and then we'll pull that mask at the end. So one more thing I want to talk about. On the inside here, around this seam right here, where the doors meet the floor of the shuttle bay, and around this arch right here, I went on the inside and I put a bead of CA glue and just let it drizzle in there, and then I hit it with my kicker really quick, and that made a seal all the way around that. And then I took and painted that whole inside with a brush with some of my flat black craft acrylic paint, and that's to light block that. Otherwise you'd have a little bit of a light leak right here, and you don't want to have one around this area right here either. So when this goes inside of the hull, this little arch right here, as I mentioned in the earlier part, it doesn't mate up perfectly with the hull, the curve right here. So we're going to have some tiny little light leaks right there. But once we get this in the hull and everything, and the hull all glued together, and after I've had it drying for a day or so, basically in the next video I'll come back and show you what we do to fix that. It's really simple. We're going to use a little bit of putty and stuff, but there's an easy way to get it in there. It's kind of hard to get to, but I'll show you an easy way to take care of it. So the shuttle bay is pretty much ready, and now I've got the neck. I went ahead and sanded down my seams just the way I always do. I used a little bit of 180 grit sandpaper just to clean off the little bit of dried up glue that was on there that was really hard, and then I put a little bit of my red spot putty on there. Now red spot putty is fine if you're going to just use it on a you could see that you just had a tiny little bit of gap right there, and this is not going to be have a lot of pressure on it or flexing or anything like that. And so it's fine to use on something like that, just to cover up a small imperfection. The red putty you don't want to use on something that's going to flex, or it can't cover a wide gap. You can't put it on really thick is what I'm trying to say. It's not meant to do that. But I've got this all smoothed out. I put my putty on there, then I sanded that down with 320 grit sandpaper, and then I finished up with some 600, and I've got this whole thing all scuffed and smoothed out and ready to go, and it's ready to take masks and everything. So we had I showed you before we closed it up, we had 4 little strips of LED in there, LED strip, 2 on each side, and they kind of face each other. This lights all this up really nice. I've got this little group of windows blacked out like I talked about. We got the little red one right here, so everything's ready to go. So as those wires came together, I did the same thing I did on the shuttle bay. I broke it down to 1 and tapped into each one, the 2 longest ones. And so all the wiring's tied together now, and we only got to bring 2 wires out the front. So it's ready to go. So what I'm going to do next, guys, is I'm going to bring the secondary hull over here, and we're going to get the shuttle bay and the neck put on, and then bring our wiring out and everything, and we can close the secondary hull up and get it all glued together, and then we'll have to let that dry for a day or two. The video after this one will be coming back and doing all of our I'll have it masked and everything, and I'll show you how I paint that. So that'll be fun. Once the secondary hull is put together, it's really all downhill from there on building this model. That's like the secondary hull is like the hardest part of the whole model to build. It's got all this, all the wiring ties together. There's a lot of little individual components like we've shown you that go together in there. But once we get past that, it's only a matter of dropping the saucer down onto the top and then putting the warp nacelles on the top of the pylons. So it'll start going really fast after that. So let me get the secondary hull over here, and we'll start working on that and get this all closed up on this video. Be right back. Back with you again, everybody. We're ready to go closing up the secondary hull here. So I'm going to take you through this whole thing. You can see we've got our shuttle bay here all set up and ready to go. And it's a little bit crowded right here, so I just have to kind of work with it. But I'm going to start off here by getting the shuttle bay put in. Now there are, let me get my little pointer here so I can show it to you. There's a contact point right here and a contact point right there, if you can see that, where the shuttle bay sits in the secondary hull here. So we're just going to dab a little bit of glue on that. And basically the shuttle bay fits in the back of this, so tight that it would never move, and it kind of self-centers itself once it's in there. So, I'm just mainly using the glue because we're gonna lay it in here, and it's just sitting on this one side for now. But I'll go ahead and set it in here and get it lined up. Sits in there just like so. Okay, and then I'm gonna route my wires the same way we did the last time with all of our other hull wiring that we did. So I'm just gonna tuck this down in here. You can see it clears our where I brought it out through the back wall right there, clears real nice. Get a little bit of CA gluing on here, and hopefully you guys can see this in the shot. Getting really low on CA. Looks like it's time to order some more. And we'll just keep working this forward. Yeah, this way we don't have a lot of clutter inside of our hull, and there won't be any wires blocking our lights or causing shadows or anything like that. You don't have to do a perfect job in here, but you want to keep it kind of nice and tidy if you can. These thinner wires, these SMD wires, can be a little bit of a pain once in a while. They tend to escape the glue. It may take one or two attempts to get it to lock down. Okay. And then we'll move on up a little bit farther forward here, just following the same path. Some glue on that guy. Hope I don't run out of CA before I finish the job here for you guys. Should be enough for the end. Okay. All right, and so while I'm thinking about it, like usual, I'm going to go ahead and mark these wires, even though they're just basic power wires. I want to make sure that I have these labeled. I'm just gonna label them Shuttle Bay Power or something like that. But they'll tie into our main power wires here up front. It just helps me at the end if I would have some kind of a problem. I can isolate each one and figure out why that particular group of lights is not working. And it doesn't happen very often, or hardly ever happens, I should say, but just to be sure. Shuttle Bay Power. Shuttle Power. Okay. So that's all pretty much set up. Now what we've got to do here, I'll grab the, before I forget that, I'm going to grab the deflector housing. Get this ready to go. Now, I'm going to show you guys what I did here. I took some of my flat black and I sprayed the back side of this because you want to do that, guys. This little ring right inside here, when you put the copper colored part in there, you can still see a little bit of the edge of that ring. And if you don't light block it, once you get all this light here, especially this little LED that's right up here towards the front, it will definitely bleed through there and you'll get a little bit of light leaking out of your deflector housing, and you don't want to have that. So a little bit of flat black, a couple coats of that will take care of that. Now we got these little burrs right here that are on this part, so I'm just going to go ahead and scuff them down here and clean those up a little bit before we put it in. Now what you want to try to do, try to clean these up as nice as you can, but you can kind of hide this too. I'll show you what you can do. You got these little one here, and one on the other side that cover that up. So you can hide one or two of these spots here. I think there's, what, 4 spots on the whole thing where that little where they were attached on the sprue. So you can hide a couple of them by indexing it the right way on the hull. But it doesn't take much to clean them up. I'm just using some 180 here to knock them down real quick. A lot of people make the mistake when they're sanding of not using aggressive enough sandpaper, and they'll sand for an hour. You know, you're trying to sand something like this with like 600 grit paper because you're afraid of it. You want to start off with a fairly aggressive paper. I use 180 to sand down all the putty. I'll get the putty knocked down to where it's, just about gone, and then I'll switch to like a 320 and then a 600. But I always start off with 180 on almost everything I sand. And after you get practiced and used to that, you can feel it you can actually feel it in your fingertips when you're sanding something, when it's smoothing out and when it's time to stop and switch to a finer grade paper. But yeah, that was one of the things that I learned the hard way, and I think it was kind of a running joke with my old body shop instructor from 35 years ago when they were teaching us how to do body work on cars. He would let people sand, he would give you like a panel on a car that had like Bondo on it, and he would say, okay, sand that down, and people would try to sand that with like 600 grit paper, and they'd be there for like an hour, and he'd finally come over there and show you the proper way to do that, starting off with a little bit more aggressive paper and then working your way down to the finer. But a lot of people make that mistake. You can get a little bit aggressive. Okay, I've got some 320 here now, and the 320 is on this edge will be plenty enough to get this. I want to scuff this whole thing down real good. But my primer is going to will fill in these scratches. You can basically fill in scratches from 320 and up. 180 grit scratches are a little bit too harsh, and primer won't fill those in unless you put several coats on it. But 320 will cover up pretty good. So we're just going to scuff this real good to make sure our paint sticks to it nice. A little bit around the inside edge here, just a little. Okay. And that's pretty much all that takes. Get rid of our stuff here. Okay, so what I've also got to do, that's one little spot on the hull that I haven't cleaned up yet. You can still see I've got some prime or some, overspray on that from the when I light blocked it, so I'm going to make sure I scrape all that off real good. Just usually take a hobby knife and do that. Want some nice bare plastic there for our glue. This goes in with kind of these little tabs that stick out here, kind of lock it in place and hold it anyway. So, but we just want to keep the, do it the right way. Get this off of here. Otherwise, the whole rest of the thing's already been cleaned up here, and I'm ready to go with my glue. I always get excited about this part of the model build because once, like I said, once the secondary hull goes together, that's when you know you're coming down the home stretch. I know my client Tim is watching this, and he's getting excited. It won't be long now, Tim, like I mentioned to you in the comment there. Another week or so, and we'll have your model on your way to you. It'd be pretty cool that you'll have a permanent record of the whole thing getting built too, which is pretty cool because I don't do that very often on these. Okay, so we're ready to go on that. So let's go ahead and get the get our deflector housing put in here. Get some more of our Model Master glue going on. Now, as I said, I'm going to look at these little tabs that were on there. Got one directly on that side and got one directly on this side. So I've got that one that'll be buried when the other side goes on here, and I've got the one on the other side buried, so you'll never see it. Okay, the one on the very top, you can't see it, sanded down real good. All right, so we're all set with that. Okay, so now next, I think we're going to do that on this side. Let's get this guy out of the way and let that ring dry just a few minutes. We're going to put the neck in. So this has already been all cleaned up like I talked about. It's worth mentioning one more time. You can see I've scraped off the paint right here. I've scraped it off on all these ribs. I've scraped it off on this this edge right here, and also on this spot right back here. That's where your contact spots are for the neck, so you want to make sure that's nice and clean. The neck's got a lot of weight on it with the saucer, so that's got to be glued in really nice and solid. And I'm not going to spare any amount of glue here when I put this on. Okay, I don't want to flood the thing, but I want plenty of glue there. Go across, make sure I'm still on camera for you guys. Go across right here. Get plenty on this little flat spot right here. And these support ribs. Okay. And we can put our neck in. And as I mentioned, guys, the reason that I do it this way, I talked about in that last video, is because right here and right here, the hull will have a lot of pressure on it if you already have these glued together and you push that neck down in there, because like all the sockets on this model, like we showed you on the pylons back here, this fits really, really tight. And you know, I've noticed it happen mostly here, but if it's splitting a little bit right up in here, you kind of can't tell because the neck kind of covers that up. But I've noticed that it'll split a little bit right here, and then I've always had to go back and you know, kind of re-putty that. So we don't want that to happen anymore. So I kind of, I don't know how many into these I had done, maybe 4 or 5 before I figured that out, and said, okay, I'm not going to let that happen anymore. So this is a better way to do that. You can see the neck will, there's no way it can be crooked, because once it's sitting down on top of these mounting ribs and then into this socket right here, you can see it's impossible for it to be crooked or anything. So that's just fine putting it in like this. All right, now we don't have to do much with our wires here, but you can see what I talked about. We had our wires coming down for our power, so you can see that now everything is going to come right out the front and tie together. Okay, so we've got everything nice and clean in there. I'll show you the rest of the wiring now that we've got the shuttle bay in there. You know, you got a lot of wiring in here, so it's not perfect, but it's all nicely, you know, as neat as can be. Nothing's going to be blocking any of our windows or anything like that. Nothing's ever going to come loose. You know, so this is nice and solid, and it'll basically last a lifetime. So we're all set to go with that. Okay, so I guess without further ado, guys, let's do the big step here, and we'll go ahead and get it all glued together. So let me run my glue around here. I'm going to start off right here at this corner. I'm going to make sure I get some of all these nice little mounting pegs up underneath of the neck right there, down here. Put some in these little slots right here. Pay a lot of attention to that little spot right there. We definitely, like I said, want that to stick together really good. Get some in this peg right here, which will help support that. And then on down the line. All over the mounting bracket. Did you ever think you'd be watching a video about watching glue dry, you guys? I'm amazed that you guys sit and watch this stuff, but thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it, and I'm just trying to pass along this stuff for to help people out. You know, I hate to see people get frustrated when they build these models. You spend a lot of money on them, and you know, just helping people out with the hobby. It's good for the hobby overall. The more people are enjoying the hobby, the better it is for the rest of us that are involved in it. So, okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'll go ahead and hit the same thing over here on this side. Move this out of the way real quick so you guys can see what I'm doing. In just a little while here, we won't have to deal with the messy wires anymore. One thing I did want to mention to you guys, we have these, let me make sure it's in camera here for you. We have these little lights that go right here on the spine. There's a, I believe it's 2 reds and a green. They're just little kind of little stubs that stick up right there. Now the kit gives you this little kind of, you know, piece that goes in there. I never use that piece because it's really impossible to get that in there and then go back and do all the putty work and sand and get this all looking really nice while those little pieces, it's almost impossible to sand around that and get that and without damaging those things. So I don't use it. What I do is I basically just glue it all together, and then I'll use either some fiber optic or there's some extra little kind of like beacon shaped things that come with the kit plastic, and I'll show you what those are a little bit later when we get to that point, and that's what I wind up using for that little detail right there. And then once it's all done, I can just find those holes and take and re-drill them with my micro pin vise, and then, you know, either use fiber optics or just push them right down in there and paint them with some of our Tamiya transparent red and green, and they come out looking real nice. But yeah, that's that little detail right there. It's almost impossible to use those the way they intend it and not ruin it when you're trying to sand and get in there and do a nice job on all the putty work and everything. So that's the reason for that. Make sure I get all the way up to the front there. I'm going to put plenty of glue on this mount. That's another really important spot. The whole weight of the ship is on this area right here, and we don't want that coming loose. Down in here. Alright, and we're going to go ahead and push these wires out through the front of the deflector housing. Alright. I don't know if you guys can see that. My arms and my hands are all cut up and beat up from... it's not from modeling, guys. Modeling's not that violent. I had to replace the valve cover gaskets on my vehicle. It's a Mercury Mountaineer SUV with a 4-liter V6, and boy, they did a good job burying those things. I had to take basically the whole top of the engine apart to get those valve covers replaced. I can't complain though, out of all the years I've had it, I had one leaky valve cover and that's the only thing that I've ever had to do to it, so it's not bad. Okay, so we're just about there, you guys. I'm just going and double checking everything, make sure I got all my glue in my spots. When I glue on this spot right here, these actually touch each other on the inside. A little bit more around the neck area here again. Just, take your time and double check everything. Okay, I'm happy with that, you guys. So we're going to take the big plunge here. We're going to stick this bad boy together here. So let me get my wires around here. Get everything out of my way. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to get these wires fed through here and pulled out the front from this side. A little bit. Be careful, make sure you don't pinch off anything. Alright, we're looking good there. Get it all lined up nice. I'm just checking to make sure none of my wires are going to get pinched, you guys. Okay, we're good there. Pop, pop, pop. Yeah, the back goes together. You're going to wind up with a little bit of a gap. That's just kind of the usual thing on one of these. Got a little bit of a gap here, and so you got to kind of work it a little bit. It'll eventually come around for you. The shuttle bay on this thing is, to use an understatement, it fits really, really tight. So that's not something to be surprised about when you put one of these together. Okay, the forward half of it's fitting together really nice like usual. Closed right up, just like it should. Let's make sure our neck is all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to kind of use the pylons here and help squeeze it together. Now what I'm going to start doing, I'm going to use my double wide tape for this. We're going to tape it up like we do, like we did with the saucer. Okay, I'm going to get this pulled together real good, get a good grip on it. I'm just putting a lot of pressure on that when I stick that down. Okay, we'll put one across the middle section here. All right. Let's go over to the bottom. Get it pulled together real good. Yeah, I find the tape works really well. This tape, when you pull it this way, it's actually incredibly strong. So just pull it real tight. Let's put one right across there on the back of that fantail. Make that a little bit longer. Alright, I'll put one right here, just for the heck of it. And I think I'll put one right there. We can use a thinner one here. Right there in front of the neck, above the deflector housing. Make sure that that neck is down in there all the way. Looks good to me. Pull this nice and tight. Okay, you guys. That's going to come out really good. Now I'm going to take, while I'm sitting here, I'm going to take and put just a little bit of glue. I'm going to drizzle my glue in this little seam here on the bottom. Just to give a little something extra. And that's going to take a good, I like to let this part here, especially since it has all this pressure on it right here in the back, I like to let that dry a good overnight. So I won't be able to do much with this for the next, probably till tomorrow. But there you have it, guys. Let's have one more little bit of fun here. Just to show you, I'll go ahead and connect up some of this wiring here. And we'll power up our lights just to double check everything before our glue is dry. Alright, a little time lapse here for you guys. It took me a minute or two here to sort my wiring out and make sure I had everything connected properly, but I've got all of our positives connected and all of our grounds connected coming from all the lighting in the hull. So everything is all set. I've got all this other stuff separated here that we marked. Now you can see why it's so important to mark all this. It kind of looks a little confusing and messy right now, but we've got everything marked so we won't have any problems going back to connect this. And don't worry, you won't miss anything when we move a little bit farther down the line here. I'll show you how we connect all this up. A lot of it has to do with like our strobes right here. We can't connect them until we bring the saucer down and bring the wires from it down through the neck and out through the front, because that's going to connect to our board, which is mounted up in the saucer. And then we've got the trigger wires here for our Bassards in the back. We'll get to those when we go ahead and mount the nacelles and put the antenna controls boards in. So I'll show you all that. But let me go ahead and turn it on for you now. You can see we've got all of our lighting. We've got a little bit of minor light leaks, no problem. Our coat of primer and everything's going to cover all that up. I'll make sure I look at it real good. If I see any spots still coming through after I get all my masks on, I'll hit it with a little bit of flat black on the outside before I prime it to cover that up and make sure we don't have any leaks. But yeah, our lighting's looking really good. You can see that we had wired our necks separately, but when we pulled those wires down and brought them into the rest of the power wires, now these are all lit up. All of our hull lighting is going on. We've got our tail lights there. You can see we've got our little light above the Shuttle Bay doors. We've got the dome on the top, which will be lit. The lights that we put inside the Shuttle Bay are lighting this area right here. And then we've got the side windows in the back of the secondary hull. These are hard to see because of tape's over it, but everything is working. Here's the other side. And talking about these blacked out areas again here, I can see there's like one right here, maybe a little bit there, maybe a little bit there, where I can still see a little bit of light coming out, but not to worry. What we'll do is after I paint this whole thing and pull all the masks and everything and get it all sealed and all that, I'll come back and carefully mask this off from the outside, and I'll just spray a little bit of black on these areas right here, and that'll take care of that. So no worries at all, you guys. A couple little light leaks coming through the plastic. What I'll do to take care of that is I'll take a little bit of my flat black. I'll have all the masks on, and I'll take a little bit of my flat black and I'll spray it just in these areas right here on the outside where I see a little bit of light leak and make sure it's gone. Then I'll put my primer over it, then I'll put my hull color over it, and we'll be all good to go. We've got some putty work to do along the seams here. We're going to be coming back in, I guess that'll be part 7, the next video, show you how we do that. And we'll get this all prepped, and in the next video we'll be painting this and putting all the markings on it, just like we did on the saucer. So this is a big step, you guys. It's out of the way. We still got a long ways to go. We're going to be putting the nacelles on. We've got to drop the saucer down on top, bring all the wires through that, and then we got a whole bunch of small little detail parts to do. We got to paint all the grills and everything that go on the engine nacelles. We've got to put the impulse deck on. We've got a bunch of little marker lights and stuff to put on. So there's a good at least a couple more segments of this video series to go, you guys, but it's looking really good. We'll come back here in the next couple days and show you more. That'll be part 7, so hope you'll tune in and check it out. Glad to see you guys are enjoying this. It's kind of cool to be back to doing one of these old build series again, and I've had a lot of fun with it. So we'll see you guys next time. Take care, and happy modeling, everyone.